Hello, and welcome to Creating a Family's Weekend Wisdom podcast. I'm Tracy Whitney, the content manager of Creating a Family, and your host for this Weekend Wisdom episode. This podcast is our chance to hear from you about the things that puzzle you. If you have a question about adoption, foster care, or kinship care, or you want to know more about how to handle some of the issues that come up with raising kids in this community, we'd love for you to send it to us. We will dig through our archives and gather some information to help strengthen your family. And you can send your questions to info@creatingafamily.org. We'll consider them for the show and might even shout you out by name. Today's question comes from Helene in Montana. Thanks for writing in, Helene. She says, are there any travel restrictions when you are fostering? For example, my family lives out of state. Can I bring my foster child with me when I travel to visit family? Well, Helene, this is a really good question, and I'm going to try and do it justice. When foster parents are planning a vacation or a trip, especially out of state or overnight, it's essential to understand the very specific travel restrictions and requirements that apply to the foster children in the state where you are fostering. These rules are designed to prioritize the child's safety and maintain legal protections, and to support ongoing relationship with birth families when appropriate and safe. So here's a few things for you to consider, Helene. Number one, know the policies and that they vary by state and by agency. As with so many of the issues around foster care, it will not surprise you to learn that there is no one single national policy on traveling with foster children. Each state welfare system and each individual agency or foster care provider can have different rules. For example, some states require written permission from the caseworker or a court order for travel out of state. Others may allow in-state travel more freely, but require formal approval for air travel or international trips. And emergency contacts and licensing agencies may have to be notified in advance. So, Helene, before you make any travel arrangements, check directly with your child's caseworker and the licensing agency that you accepted this placement through. They can guide you through their specific travel approval process and the timelines, as well as who needs to know what and when. Second, you need to obtain your required documentation in advance. So if they're requiring written permission or anything like that, you have to plan ahead, and most agencies will require some sort of advance notice, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks for the travel approval process. You might need to provide things like written permission from the child's caseworker, from the agency or the court, a travel consent letter signed by the appropriate authorities, documentation detailing where you're going, when you're going, where you're staying, contact information for where you're staying, also contact information for emergencies while you're traveling, who's your next of kin, medical insurance, contact information for you and for the child, etc. And for international travel, the child's passport and sometimes court approval will often be needed and has to be provided in advance. This is when being an organized resource parent will come in really handy. It's so important that you keep all of this documentation organized and accessible when you are traveling. Paper and digital copies of all of that paperwork will be helpful for you. So on your phone or your laptop, as well as paper hard copy form in a file. Be prepared to bring these documents with you. And when you travel with a foster child, always be sure to carry a copy of the foster placement agreement and the travel consent or court order that allows you to bring this child out of the state. You also need to make sure you have with you the child's medical insurance cards and immunization records, the caseworker's contact information, your licensing workers' emergency numbers, and any medications, dosages, and instructions for those medications, along with any other related health information that might come into play during travel. Identification for this child while you're flying or crossing borders, including state ID or birth certificates, will depend on the child's age and travel method. It'll also depend which forms of identification you use on what your agency or state's requirements are. You might also want to consider communicating with the birth parents when permitted. If it's safe and allowed to do so, notifying the birth parents that you are planning to travel with their child is not just considerate and respectful, but it's also helpful communication for rearranging schedules and visitations and contact. And if they have a communication agreement or visitation rights agreement, you may need to look at the fine print of that to see what specific information you have to provide to them if you are traveling with their child. So you're going to want to notify the caseworker well in advance so they can coordinate with the birth parents about that, and then be open and flexible to rearranging previously scheduled visits or contact, so that if you missed a visit or you missed a video call or something like that, you're still partnering with them to allow contact for their child. You can share your travel dates when appropriate and allowed, like we're going to the beach for 4 days in Florida. You don't have to give specific details of where you're staying or who you're staying with if privacy is a concern or safety is a concern. So it's important to remember that all of this communication and all of this documentation and all of this permission seeking should follow your local agency that you placed with, as well as your state requirements. So you're going to, again, want to check with and work with your caseworker for guidance on this. And don't contact those birth parents directly unless you have specific permission to do so. It takes some planning, it takes some thought, it takes some intentionality to kind of put all of this together. You could also network with another foster parent who's done this before and get their read on how to do it and when to do it. And it is possible. So, you can include this child on your family vacations or memorable trips or visits to grandma. It can be done and be a really wonderful experience for you and for this child. It just has to be planned and thought about in advance. So in summary, let's just review real quick. Foster parents have to understand and follow their state and agency-specific travel policies. Foster parents have to request the necessary permissions and documents in advance. Foster parents have to carry the important paperwork that goes with all of that during their travel time. And they should communicate with their caseworkers and the birth families as allowed and as safe to do so. With the proper steps, travel can be a very exciting and enriching experience for you all, and it can be compliant with the child's care plan. So we would love to know if this ends up helping you, Helene. You can write back to us and let us know. You can leave a rating or a review to tell us how we did, and let us know what else you want to know about traveling with foster kids, or what to do with your foster kids if you can't travel with them is always a good question that we could cover in the future. So if today's podcast helped you, Helene, or anyone else listening, we would love to know how it helped you. Please consider leaving us a rating or a review wherever you catch this episode today. And don't forget, we are on YouTube and Spotify. So if you like to watch your podcasts or listen to podcasts in places like Spotify, we would love to hear from you over there as well. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.